today we wanted to focus on participant satisfaction and whether and how we're collecting participant satisfaction information and getting feedback from the patients we're serving and their family and caregivers as part of the program. And I think, as everybody knows, that this collecting participant satisfaction feedback was originally intended to be part of the program, and it was a required element for the teams up until I think it was sometime last fall. CMS made an announcement that due to the quality of data concerns, they were no longer going to require teams to submit data from the patient experience survey. So I think last November was kind of the end of reporting the patient experience survey data. And there were some teams, that maybe for them they haven't, been collecting that kind of data since then, and we know there were some challenges with that. But some teams continued to collect it and probably collected it in a different way because there really is some value, very important value in terms of understanding, what about the program, what about our programs is working for the participants and for their caregivers, what isn't working, how can we improve. Getting that kind of feedback from the people who the program's intended to serve is really important to being person-centered. And it's also something I think that as teams are positioning themselves for doing work with other payers, that it may be important for teams to be able to demonstrate that they have the capacity to collect that kind of data and can even speak to some of the results that they've been getting in terms of participant satisfaction. So with all that in mind, we did do a poll, and somebody pushed out the poll results already, of the teams recently, asking about which teams were still collecting participant satisfaction data. And as you can see from the survey results, of the 27 teams that reported, 7 teams are collecting patient satisfaction information, and 20 teams aren't at this point of those that responded. And of those, I think a couple of those teams, they're collecting it from patient and family caregivers only, and most of them are collecting it both from patients and family caregivers. And the very positive news there, I think, is that of those teams that are collecting the data, the vast majority, either agree or strongly agree that the participants are giving very positive feedback in their surveys. So I think that's very positive. Just a couple of other details that we wanted to share with you about that we learned from that poll is that this information, most of the teams that reported back to us said that they are finding use for that information in terms of sharing it with their CBO team and sharing that data with their hospital and other partners, and for use for marketing purposes to other payers and partners. So, we think this is really, it's important, I think, for all the teams to step back and think about, are you getting that feedback from the people that we're serving, and how are we doing that, and how are we using that information effectively? So we're going to hear from some of the teams that are doing that, and we also have on the line today Marty Hatley. Those of you who were at LS11 this summer will remember Marty. He moderated a couple of the sessions for us with the big panel sessions, and he also talked about the patient and family advisory councils and that opportunity for teams to connect with those PFACs in their hospitals and in their communities. And this is basically his area of expertise, is engaging the patients. So we're very excited to have Marty on the call, and he's going to be speaking a little bit later after we hear from some of the teams that have been collecting this data. So Alicia, can I turn it back over to you?
I'll take it, Sarah. This is Chris. So we are excited to have Marty join in to share his responses with us, about how some of the teams are using patient satisfaction in some different and unique ways. And so we're very pleased to welcome Jennifer Drago from Sun Health to tell us a little bit about her team's process for how they collect the data and how they use that information to market their program to other payers and also to recognize high-performing employees. So Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you very much. I am excited to tell you about our survey, which we actually started well before we were a demonstration project. We've used this survey really from day one. We did suspend the use of our survey while we had different requirements from CMS. But, we were glad to bring it back for some reasons that I'll show you. There are some open-ended parts of our survey at the end where we can really hear from our patients the value that they see in the program, and we didn't have that with the other survey that we were using for that period. So glad to have it and glad to share it with you. So our survey process is fairly simple. Following patient discharge from the program, we mail them out an envelope. Actually, we have volunteers that stuff the envelopes for us, so they're all ready to go. We just have to put a label on them. And it contains a cover letter, a 2-page survey, which we copy front to back, so it's really one piece of paper, and then a business reply envelope for them to send the survey back to us. And I want to mention, I think the business reply is probably important and leads to our high response rate. If we were stamping, like putting a self-addressed stamped envelope in there, that would be costs that we would incur whether or not the survey came back. And then if we didn't stamp it or didn't have a business reply, I think that would decrease our response rate. So the fact that we use business reply is kind of key to our program because we don't pay for the postage unless the patient returns it, but then if they return it, of course, they don't pay for it. So that's something that's key to our success. And we already had the permit and the mailbox, so that was great because of our other business entities. So when the surveys are received, we have a volunteer who works with us on a weekly or biweekly basis, and she basically enters the responses in a basic Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it's pretty basic. And then we can look at the results at any point, but we actually make a point of analyzing them and updating our results on a quarterly basis. So let me tell you a little bit about the survey itself. So it's got a couple different sections. First section is where we ask the patient to rate us on a 5-point scale, and the 5 points are excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor, and ask them specific questions about our nurses' knowledge, level of expertise, et cetera, our communication, the value of our educational materials, and then we ask them to give us an overall rating of our program. On the back side, the part, and I can't wait to show you these results, we actually asked them some confidence questions about their confidence in their self-management of their condition. And we asked them, now granted this is a little bit challenging for some patients because we're asking them after the program to think about their confidence both before they started and after they started. So I'm sure there's probably a statistician out there that might say that's maybe not as reliable as we would like because, in a reliable setting you would test them before and then test them after or survey them twice. And we're just surveying them once. But we asked them to respond on 4 different questions, which I'll share in a minute, and to tell us if they were very confident, confident, somewhat confident, or not at all confident. So that part's on a 4-point scale. And then we have open-ended questions, as I mentioned. So the cover letter is fairly simple, and I understand that they're going to share samples of this on the CCTP site, but we basically have a cover letter that says, our records indicate that you are part of our program. We really want to use your feedback to continue to improve the program. Thank you. It's got my phone number on it, so if they really have a concern, they can call me right then, or they can, obviously call me in lieu of returning the survey. I get very few calls, by the way, so most people use the survey format to answer. And then let me show you some samples of the survey itself. And again, this is only snapshots of, I think, the top half of the first page, so you can see some of the things. And it's just a quick circle your response based on a couple of different, the front pages rating them, having them rate us on our nurses, our communication, and then the other parts you can't see are the educational materials and the overall rating of the program. The back side of the page is the confidence section, which I won't be able to show you here, but you'll get to see it on the website. But this is the part I love all of it, to be honest with you, but this is the gold to me, because at the very end of the survey, this is the bottom of the second page, we ask them, would you recommend the program to others, yes or no, and then give them a space to explain right there, why would you recommend it or why would you not recommend it, and what did you like best about the Care Transitions program, what did you like least. And the responses that we get to those open-ended questions, sometimes they tell us, they'll name a nurse by name. Sometimes they'll just tell us specific things they like about our program, for example, our personal health care record, or, I've been a diabetic for 30 years and I learned new things from your nurse that I never knew before. And then, some of the things that they liked least. And some of the things we hear there are, I really didn't need those weekly follow-up calls. For some of our healthier patients, they felt like, maybe 1 or 2 check-ins was enough. So this is the part, though, that I really like. So let me show you some of the results. So first of all, our response rate, it's actually 35%. So when I prepared the slide, I went and checked our year-to-date, and we're at 35%, so we must have got some more surveys in, which is great. And so that one question about give an overall rating of our program, and that's on a 5-point scale. So the average rating that we have right now is a 4.7 on a scale of 5. And then the question that you just saw, would you recommend the program to others, yes or no? 98.6%. So in year-to-date in 2015, we've only had 7 patients that have said, no, I just don't think this was worth my time or was of value to me, which they're entitled to their opinion. But I think that's some pretty impressive information then to take back to our hospital partners, because, of course, they're very focused on their own patient satisfaction and their patient experience. And so experience like this, I think, just helps to improve the hospital side of things. Let me go on to the next results. So this is the confidence part that I was talking about, where we ask the clients or the patients to rate their confidence on 4 statements, which you can read there. And it's all about, do I possess the knowledge needed and the skills so that I can make decisions about my health condition and take the action that's needed. And you can see we rate them. They rate us pre and post. Now, this is on a scale of 4 points, so it's a little bit lower. And the points, again, 4 is very confident, 3 is confident, 2 is somewhat, and 1 is not at all confident. So I think the important thing here is that patients are recognizing that they are more confident based on the additional knowledge that they were able to gain from our nurses around the self-management of their condition. So that's very powerful, and of course we share this with our hospital partners too. The gold part of this, which is the patient comments, and I just love to share these. We share the patient comments in their entirety with all of our team members, with all of our leadership. We share selected comments with our hospital partners just because I don't think they want pages, reams and reams. But this snippet that you see on your screen is actually produced in an infographic that we share with the hospital on a monthly basis. So I'm constantly using new quotes from patients. And I try to find the real meaty ones, the ones that really explain what they saw as the true value of the program, so that we can share that and use that in our marketing. I won't read them. I'll let you read them. So what do we do with the results? Well, we do recognize our team as a whole. I mean, I feel very confident that our team does a wonderful job based on the results that we get and the satisfaction level that we have among our patients. So we do team recognition on about a quarterly basis. About the same time frame, we're individually recognizing staff members who are called out by name for specific things in the survey, and so that's kind of a fun thing too. We give them gift certificates to the hospital gift shops based on their recognition. And then we do, as I mentioned, we do monthly infographic reports, which include not just our readmission rates, but a lot of the satisfaction data, including some of the testimonials, and we share that with our hospital partners. And now we are incorporating all of that information into our presentations to help sustain the program. And that is the end of, I think, what I was going to provide. Chris, I think that's my last slide. So I'll just stop there and then wait to see if there are any questions in a while.
That's great. Thanks, Jennifer. Before I guess I just want to have everyone on the webinar take a minute to reflect and think about, how that process can be adapted, and to also ask your questions, any questions you might have for Jennifer in the group chat. But before, so while everyone on the call is doing that, I wanted to commend your team, Jennifer, because I think there were you had a number of great points that I took down. And, I think one of the questions in the group chat from David was a problem that they found in the survey collection with confusion of, the care transitions, the CBO side of things, and the hospital staff. And so, I thought, Jennifer, as you were doing your presentation and I saw this question, I thought that was a really great way to address that. And that, the welcome letter that you send out to the participants seems like a really valuable aspect of things. But I want to also let everybody else have an opportunity to react to your presentation. So go for it, everyone.
So would you like me to respond to that question about whether there's confusion?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, so just in a nutshell, we do have some patients that respond to our survey, and it's very evident that their feedback is meant for the hospital, and it's usually the angry ones, to be honest with you. And so whenever we get that information, they're very specific, usually using a nurse's name and a floor, and so we're able to, the survey is completely anonymous, so we have to be able to identify which of our hospital partners it pertains to through the patient's response, and then we share that with the chief medical officer of the hospital so that they can follow up on, or at least be aware of the concern. Again, because the survey is anonymous, if the patient doesn't identify themselves, they might not be able to do the follow-up that they would normally do on a patient complaint. And another question that I see is, did you welcome caregivers to respond as well to the survey? And you can see the letter's very generic, so we don't really ask anyone in particular to respond. I believe for the most part the patients are the ones responding, but again, sometimes based on the responses, particularly to the open-ended questions, you can tell that the answer is that the survey is being filled out by a spouse or a caregiver. So that definitely does happen, but we don't have any specific language to invite it one way or another.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Marty, Sarah, Alicia, anybody, do you have any reflections for Jennifer?
This is Marty. I'd love to jump in. Jennifer and team, when I think about using patient responses and the kind of satisfaction surveying you're doing, I really think of it falling into three buckets. One is feedback. How are we doing? What can we do better? The second is learning. Patients and their families, see things that we just don't see, and so we can learn from that experience. I go back to, I think it was Tony, the patient we had at the last learning session, where she kind of just in a joking way talked about how she almost didn't open the door to her coach, and just kind of, if you mind that, the treasure of her comments, you just kind of find something to learn there. And the third is marketing. So feedback, learning, and marketing. And Jennifer, you hit all of those. One thing I wanted to mention, I was excited by your excitement about the open-ended questions, and I thought they were good open-ended questions. But one of them you might think about another one, and that is sort of the Facebook question. Is there anything on your mind? Is there any advice you have for us? You kind of get at that by tell us what we're doing well, tell us what you like least. But something even more open-ended might bring in some more of that learning. Just to give them, a chance to reflect on something that they really want to tell you that they weren't guided by your first two questions. Mm-hmm. And then I also wanted to mention that I thought that Amanda's presentation earlier, and her use of the video, you were doing the same thing. You were using it for learning purposes, for feedback purposes, and for marketing purposes. And I thought that was really nice because sometimes the visual and the tone that comes through in that video, it brings another dimension than just the survey data, although survey data is obviously important too. So thank you. Great. Very exciting to hear this.
That's wonderful. And this is Alicia again. And Marty, thank you for your comments. Those were really great. And again, I guess my real takeaway from this, I really like your confidence questions. And I think, those really fit into kind of Marty's third bucket of marketing. And it really just gives you a little bit of data. And, just like you said, a biostatistician might tear it apart. But that being said, you actually have some data showing the participants' perceptions. So I think that's great. So I kind of want to move us on at this point. And we actually have another team that we are going to hear from. And I'll be happy to turn it over to Susan Swinford from the Kentucky Appalachian Transition Services, or CATS team. And Susan is going to discuss her team's process for collecting data on participant satisfaction and how they use that information for marketing and other aspects of their program. So, Susan?
Hello, and thank you for having me. Next slide. And the next. We began using Dr. Mary Naylor's Transitional Care Model Survey in 2012 when we did a pilot in preparation for the CCTP application, and she provided this survey to us. We used this satisfaction survey as one of our measures of the intervention's effectiveness. So, of course, the ultimate goal is to improve the transition intervention, and that obviously would require measuring the patient caregiver satisfaction. We use the survey's results in assisting us in prioritizing new opportunities to improve our transition interventions. During the final home visit, whether using Dr. Naylor's model or our modified CTI intervention, the home coach nurse will let the patient and the caregiver know that there will be a volunteer who will be calling them to ask them questions about what they thought of the CATS intervention and to prepare them that the question is coming. And generally we do that with at least 1 month of the end of the intervention. We train volunteers who are members of the Appalachian community so that they have the dialect and the linguistic that would be familiar to the patients and families that they're calling. We also have a data manager who then inputs the data into our system, and either our CATS data manager or our corporate quality improvement group will then compile the data, and so that we can report it to our payers and to our partner hospitals at least every 2 months. Next slide. Of the domains of the survey, there are questions that address the hospitalization discharge planning process, including the patient's understanding of medication instructions, their comfort in managing their health. There are questions that determine if the home coach followed the transition intervention and didn't deviate from our model, such as did they do the correct number of visits? Did the patient know that CATS is a 24/7 on-call program? Did they develop patient and family-centered goals? Were they educated on their health management? And also the discharge effectiveness. There's also a section of 12 questions about the patient and caregiver's experience and their impression of the CATS nurse, such as they'll be asked, my CATS nurse treated me with dignity and respect, spent enough time with me, and was not hurried. Next. The results that I'm going to present today are actually from the initial pilot that we did for another payer, the University of Kentucky Healthcare. And in this initial pilot, there were 50 patients who went through it. Several of the patients actually died during crisis. So probably there is almost a 50% response rate. We use the patients' and caregivers' comments to make changes to our intervention and analysis of what to do differently. The no answer column has to do with patients who did not have an answer for that question. They had a hearing loss, they didn't understand the question, or maybe they asked to skip some questions so that the survey would be done sooner. Next. And many of the questions are very similar to the survey that you just heard. Next, we'll just flip through these. The volunteer asks, when she talks to them, she asks if they can give an example of what the nurse did to assist them in managing their diagnosis disease better. And we use those and share those with our home coaches. We also, next, ask them if the nurse explained their condition in terms they could understand. We frequently find patients who did not understand why they had been in the hospital because of health literacy in our service area, poor health literacy, and low literacy in our service area. So it helps us to evaluate the effectiveness of our coaches in understanding the literacy level of our patients. Okay. With this slide, with the slide that says, help me feel less nervous about my medical condition, when we saw the results of this, we knew that we had to re-script this question for the volunteer so that the patient understood what we were asking them about and could answer the question better. Next. So you can see it's the same kind of questions that the volunteer is asking the patient that you saw in the last presentation. Next. Results from this question have led to changes in the discharge process, not only in the hospital when we loop the results back to our hospital partners, but also more specific instructions for our home coaches and for our hospital coaches, and it led to us implementing the personal health care record in our intervention. Next. And then, of course, the overall satisfaction. And these slides were actually in a large presentation after the initial pilot back to leadership at the UK Healthcare, and they took these very seriously, of course, and we've shared this with them. Okay. Next, we use the results of this in all of our proposals to other payers. And, of course, the results that I showed you is actually another payer. We do ask for patient quotes, and we use those in marketing and in our proposals to other payers and healthcare entities. And we also use it to demonstrate the intervention's effectiveness when we're negotiating contracts with other payers and entities. We also provide these to our partner hospitals, other payers, and other hospital entities that we're already transitioning for to keep them engaged in the process and give them an update on what's going on in the home intervention. Okay. In improving our program, this allows us to give staff recognition, as in the other presentation. We do get specific quotes about home coaches that we share back with them and share with all of our home coaches. And it's a feedback loop to the coaches on their performance, but also to us when we get the results. And it's led to, actually, in a couple instances, it led to staff termination when we found out that they had not been adhering to the evidence-based model, especially Dr. Naylor's model. We used the results and have used it when we saw that there was a need for further education for our home coaches, not only as a group but individually for intensive re-education. All of our hospital partners and our payers expect the survey results in regular reports, some monthly and some probably every 2 months, and to know what they're paying for and what they're getting. And it's certainly led to positive changes in our intervention process. And I think a full script of the full survey script is on the CCT website, as well as the full presentation to UK Healthcare of the results of our first initial pilot, which the results of the pilot led to continuation at UK on a full-time basis. Thank you for letting me share that.
That's awesome. Thanks, Susan. You said so much, and it's great to hear what you're doing. I want to take a minute to just to have everyone on the call take a minute to reflect, to think about how this process might be able to be adapted to your own communities. And for his reaction, wanted to ask Marty for his reaction to Susan's presentation.
Well, Susan, again, really impressive, and I saw the same kind of framework play out there, the feedback, the learning, the marketing. I was particularly struck by your insight that the answers to the questions help you understand the literacy level of your patients. So I thought that was just a beautiful insight. You are using this to actually continuously improve and be better able to know the particular people that you're serving and perhaps stratify them by how to best approach them and give them knowledge they can use. So I thought that was a really, really nice insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. That's great. And Marty, I also wanted to just let you know there was a question in the group chat that was asking, you had responded to Jennifer's question early, and you had given her there were 2 questions that she might be able to, for her open-ended questions for the survey. And the first was there anything on your mind? And it seems that some folks didn't get what the other question was.
The other question was, do you have any advice for us? I think people like to give advice, and it makes them feel like they're part of the team. So that was the second question.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. It's always good for an oral response to the group chat. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Carolyn Ditchendorf from the Southern Ohio team to talk to us about their unique approach to gathering patient satisfaction. Carolyn?
Hi, thanks for having us. I've got Mindy here, too, in case I forget anything. But, okay, are you going to do the next slide? Okay, so here's our patient satisfaction postcard. We've tried different ways of gauging patient satisfaction historically throughout our project, a little more in depth, and we never had very good return rates. So Mindy, my cohort here, had an innovative readiness training at the military event that she happened to partake in. And they had seen almost 3,000 patients in 10 days, and they needed to gauge patient satisfaction at the end of each day for patients that went through that process. So she came up with this really, keep it simple, short and sweet, effective way of gauging patient satisfaction. Literally a happy face, an unhappy face, what did you like the most, what did you like the least, and room for additional comments. So we are a transitions program that is actually a collaboration of 3 AAAs down here in Southern Ohio, and we have 5 partner hospitals. So whenever we begin to implement something, and this is something that we just started to implement about a month ago. So we always start with one hospital, which is in our AAA area here in Marietta, and then we slowly branch it out into all partner hospitals. So as of a week ago, our last partner hospital began initiating this process with patient satisfaction as well. So what happens is after the visit, this is a self-addressed stamped envelope. The patient is asked to, take time to fill this out and just pop it in the mail. The coaches remind them at follow-up phone calls if that hasn't been returned. We're able to gauge, it's anonymous. You can see there's no room for patient identification. But oftentimes, like the other speakers have shared, patients will identify a specific coach or an event, and you can kind of pinpoint it. We've developed a way of tracking what hospital it comes from. We just put the initial of the hospital in the upper right-hand corner of what you see on your screen, and that way we can at least get it down to individual hospitals in terms of patient satisfaction rate for them. But what we're able to do, and by far this has been the most successful thing that we've ever implemented return rate-wise, with our patients. So we're going to keep rolling with it. But what we're using this for right now is we gather the comments, we use it in marketing. Our satisfaction rate right now is 100% happy faces. And that's really what our purpose of this patient satisfaction was. We wanted to gauge our program satisfaction rate, so we had something to share in our marketing. So there you go. The other thing that is also down here, and I'm sure other areas have it too, but down here in Appalachia, kind of southern Ohio neck of the woods, we often have literacy problems. So more complicated follow-up requires a higher literacy. And the happy face, sad face, oftentimes we get these postcards returned with a face, you know, the face circled and that's it, not really any additional comments, but allows people who might have literacy issues a voice as well, whether they were satisfied or not.
Thank you, Carolyn, for sharing. I love the simplicity of this. So, so I want to take a minute, and Marty, we'd love to hear your reaction as well and your thoughts from this.
I love the simplicity of it, too, and I'm going to make my comment really simple. The additional comments field, I would put a question mark after that instead of a colon. So just kind of, you've got kind of a nice colloquial conversational style here. You might actually even change that a bit to say, any advice for us, or something in the same tone of keeping it light, keeping it simple and invitational. But I thought it was cool.
Yes, and I'll add that it would be something simple for a team to implement by next week, another team. So.
True. That's a really good point. I also like the smiley faces. We use a lot of that for, my background is neuronursing, and so we use the smiley face thing to go with for a lot of our aphasic patients, and it's very helpful in a different perspective. So thanks for that, Carolyn. I think that is just great. So as everybody is still using the group chat feature, we had a quick poll question that we wanted to ask everybody, and that is, would you consider adopting a participant satisfaction survey in the next 3 months? So please only choose one of the answers. We're looking for either yes, a yes with a qualifier, please send us copies of tools that you can adapt, and no. We're interested to know, what you would like to know. So while you're answering that question, we are waiting for the results to come back. And hopefully we'll have those shortly. Alicia, did you wanna, well, I guess we can't move on to the monthly data yet.
Chris, can you push the results? There we go. All right. Wonderful. So before we move on to the monthly data, to those of you who responded yes, please send us copies of the tool that we can adapt. I believe we have the tools from the teams we heard from today on the website. So you can access those currently by going to the CCTP website, clicking on Peer Sharing and Learning, and then click Engagement of Patients and Caregivers. And if you have any trouble finding those, just shoot an email to cctp@lewin and we can help you find those.